Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Shabbat Shalom. It's wonderful to see you all here this evening and to see all of our participants online as well. This is great. Our first week, we had 8 screens online. Tonight, we have 13, so we're increasing there. We have a consistent turnout in person as well. So perhaps this hybrid option is here to stay. We'll see how it goes from here. But in any case, I do want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. And I wanted to welcome you to this service where we'll be talking about the need for inspiration. Even if one doesn't believe in a spirit world, the idea of inspiration is still an important part of meeting human needs, and we'll have a chance to explore that through our service this evening. It's also a great pleasure to welcome back to this congregation in an active role in person, our music director, Ellen Apley, who will be here to sing with us, which is really wonderful. I want to make sure this microphone, is it on? It is on, great. So that way the people on Zoom will be able to hear as well. And so that's a real pleasure for us to have her with us. It's also always wonderful to be able to be together and sing together. We're not quite at the share wine together phase. That will be coming up, we hope, as things move forward. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is people in the room have service booklets that they can follow along with. And I will share to the screen the same service so that those online will be able to see us and to participate as well. So we'll begin with a song that celebrates simply being together. The words such as they are bim bam, bim 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 bam, and Shabbat Shalom. So as you feel comfortable, please do join me. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, and just hum. For this next reading, I'll ask you to read responsively together in the italicized text. 6 days we speak, tonight we listen. 6 days we build, tonight we rest. 6 days we take care of others, tonight we nurture ourselves. 6 days we work to change our world, tonight we are renewed by what is eternal. 6 days we plan for the future. Tonight we are enveloped in the present. 6 days we eat and drink in haste. Tonight we savor the taste of bread and wine and feel the bond to the world that feeds us. 6 days we teach. Tonight we learn. 6 days we hear the clamor. Tonight we listen for clarity. 6 days we struggle to expand our influence. Tonight we are dissolved in a greater influence. 6 days we focus our vision at the task at hand. Tonight, we look beyond what we can see. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, and please turn to the people near you and wish them Shabbat Shalom as well. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom Aleichem, Ohavei HaShalom, Shomrei Shalom. Shalom Aleichem, Ro'efei Shalom, Shalom Aleichem. Volhem LaShalom, Ohavei HaShalom, Tzechem LaShalom.
In my mother's house, she baked breads, swollen with breaths of yeast, and she lit candles, saying benedictions through lips that flickered like the light she blessed, saying sounds that talked in steps sewn like stitches in a cloth. She gave me her needle, whose swift, slender shaft went straight to my heart, where it has lodged all these years like a restive splinter, waiting for the flicker of the ancient lights to flash again above the benedictions told over bread in dreams of innocence.
Let us light these nights and see the way to joy, and let us say Simcha. Let us light these nights and see the way to joy, and let us say Simcha. Let us light these nights and see the way to love, and let us say Ahava. Let us light these nights and see the way to love, and let us say Ahava. Let us light these nights and see the way to peace, and let us say Shalom. Let us light these nights and see the way to peace, and let us say Shalom. And let us say Shalom.
Even if we are not sharing wine together, the performance of a special kiddush or a sanctification of the wine is an important part of the process of celebrating Shabbat. In our case, the wine is not transformed into something new. It is not added a layer of holiness to it, but rather we use the sense of sanctification in terms of dedication. In fact, in modern Hebrew, the dedication of a book is the same root of Hadash as to be holy, to be set aside. You sanctify the bride or the groom to each other with the traditional Jewish wedding phrase. And so it is really the idea of devotion, of marking it as something separate, that is the root of that concept of Kiddush. And so this evening I'll sing our Kiddush in Hebrew, and then we'll say the English all together. Savri Marnan Rabbanan De'etmo, Kiddashnu et Hayayin. Savri Marnan Rabbanan De'hayom, Baruchim Borei Pri Hagafen. HaShabbat Mesamchenu, HaShabbat Merapenu, Legufotenu, Lenafshotenu. HaShabbat Me'ashrenu, Baruchim HaShomrim et Yom HaShabbat. In English together. The rabbis and sages of old proclaimed, we sanctify this wine. The rabbis and sages of today proclaim, blessed is the fruit of this vine. Shabbat makes us joyful. The Shabbat heals us in body and in spirit. The Shabbat enriches us. Blessed are those who keep the Shabbat. Let us wish each other l'chaim to life. L'chaim. Shabbat Moment by Marge Piercy. And at the conclusion of this poem, I'll invite us to enter into a space of silent reflection, to breathe, to let go of the cares of the week, and to enter into a place of sheket v'shalom, of peace and quiet. A scarf trailing over the lilac sunset, fair weather clouds, cirrus uncinus, silk chiffon. Twilight softens the air, whispering, come, lie down with me. Untie the knots of the will, Loosen your clenched grip, barren hills of bone. Here, no edges to hone, only the palm fallen open as a rose about to toss its petals. What you have made, what you have spoiled, let go. Let twilight empty the crowded rooms, quiet the jostling colors to hues of swirling water, pearls of fog. This is the time for letting go, like a released balloon dwindling. Tilt your neck and let your face open to the sky like a pond catching light, drinking the darkness. I always think of those 10 seconds as a gift to myself that I should give myself more often. Moments. There are moments in life we remember for a lifetime. Our working days are collections of discrete experiences, minute after minute of activity, bustle, and business. We move from task to task, from person to person, as if a moment of pause and reflection would be $1 lost and an opportunity missed. Yet the truth is that in our constant movement, we miss the opportunity to celebrate the moment. Resting, pausing, breathing, thinking, relaxing, living. These are all worthy activities and necessary for a complete life. One more trinket will not help us relax, and one more thing will not calm our minds. It is our choice to stop and reflect on the big picture, where we have been and where we want to be. There are moments in life we remember for a lifetime.
הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, הנה מה טוב ומנעים, הנה מה טוב ומנעים, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
Wisdom is built of moments, new experiences, new insights, new personal connections. We learn very early that pain is real, that joy is essential, that love is strength. We learn that to need others is as powerful as being needed. Moments of human experience can be lessons in the pursuit of happiness. This poem by the Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai speaks of one of those moments and of the insight into the human condition that he offers from that experience. I'll read this poem first in Hebrew and then in English, but listen even in the Hebrew words for in the Hebrew original lines of the poem, for 3 key words: Roshi, my head; Delet, door; and Yadech, your hand. And they interact in interesting ways, as we'll see. כשנחבט ראשי בדלת, צעקתי, ראשי, ראשי, וצעקתי, דלת, דלת. ולא צעקתי אמא ולא אלוהים, ולא אמרתי חזון אחרית ימים על עולם שבו לא עוד ראשים ודלתות. כשלטפת את ראשי לחשתי, ראשי, ראשי, לחשתי, ידך, ידך. ולא לחשתי אמא ולא אלוהים, ולא ראיתי מראות מופלאים של ידיים מלטפות ראשים בשמיים הנפתחים. כל שאני צועק ואומר ולוחש, הוא לנחם את עצמי. ראשי, ראשי, דלת, דלת, ידך, ידך. When my head got banged on the door, I screamed, my head, and I screamed, door, door. And I did not scream mother and not God, Nor did I speak of the vision of the end of days, of a world where there will be no heads and doors anymore. When you stroked my head, I whispered, my head, and I whispered, your hand, your hand. And I did not whisper mother and not God, and I did not see wonderful visions of hands stroking heads in the opening heavens. Whatever I scream and speak and whisper is to comfort myself. My head, door, door, your hand, your hand.
Hayamim chovim shana omeret. Hayamim chovim shana omeret. Avohamina, avohamela, avohacheroya, tamid nisheret. Days pass and years go by, ever and ever. Days pass and years go by, ever and ever. And as our voices ring out with songs we sing, life is a joyous thing, ever and ever.
Living from moment to moment in an uncertain world is difficult. The power of hope keeps us alive. We discover the truths of life from human experience. Yet experience is a mixed teacher. We find sorrow and suffering, and we find joy and jubilation. Some are good and giving, and others are cruel and selfish. As much as we wish for a just world, injustice persists. There are so many sides to our reality that we can get lost in the possibilities. What are the lessons we learn from special moments of human experience? Our happiness depends on other people. Death is real, and so is this life, the only life we know. Knowledge always changes, finding new truths to add to our understanding of the world. Hope is the choice to face an uncertain future with the joy of being alive. We choose hope. We live by hope. If you're moved to stand for the singing of Hatikva, please feel free to do so. And I invite you to join us in singing a song of hope. Thank you. Please be seated. In every celebration, in every special moment, there is an echo of sorrow amid sounds of joy. Life is never entirely happy or entirely sad. When we enjoy a musical concert, we know that it will end. Though we are sorry when it is over, we eagerly await the next performance. When we remember a loved one, we are sorry that they are no longer with us, And at the same time, we remember how much joy they brought us. When we celebrate our lives, we remember those with whom we can no longer celebrate. The sweet is matured by the bitter, and the bitter is tempered by the sweet. We miss those who brought us joy even when we are joyful. Though we miss them, our joyful memories give us consolation. In every celebration, there is an echo of sorrow amid sounds of joy. And so at this time in our congregation, we share memories of people whose lives have passed, specifically remembering those, the anniversary of whose death occurs in this season. And so I invite those who feel moved to do so again to stand for a moment as we share the names of our yortzites or death anniversaries at this time. Tonight we remember with great love Alvin Arbitman, Dorothy Arbitman, Nanette Fried, Felice Friedman, Joel Friedman, Abert Goldman, Jerome Gurwitz, Jim Gustafson, Edna Gustafson, Lawrence Handelsman, Warren Heron, Yona Holland, Dorothy Kramer, Gladys Lyshenko, Charles Lippitz, Sherwin Malice, Elliot Meerman, Monty Moses, Rose Pashko, Robert Reynolds, Norma Rittenberg, Shirley Robin, Willa Runnerstrom, Charlotte Schoenbrod, Siegfried Silberman, Sylvia Simon, Frida Simon, Simone Solomon, Max Wagner, and Sherwin Wine. I would like to first ask those here this evening, if there are names that you would like to remember, you will say them and I'll repeat them into the microphone. And then anyone in the Zoom meeting as well, if you have a name you'd like to remember, please type it into the chat and I will share it with our gathering today as well. Any names to share here? Miriam Sasson. Thank you. Charles Snyder. From Zoom, no. So let us pause then for a moment of silent tribute to their memories and in memory of all of our loved ones. In Jewish life, we say, Zecher Tzadikim Livracha, the memory of good people is a blessing to us. Let us now hear these words sung. Thank you. Please be seated. And I'd like to invite our steering committee chair, Victoria Ratnaswamy, to come forward and to let you know of some upcoming events in the congregation.
Should I keep this in the same place? Shabbat Shalom. And
you can stand back a little bit. It'll
stand
pick
back.
it up.
Okay. And Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I really like waving into the camera. I'm going to let you know about, I have announcements about some upcoming events. They are in the weekly email. They're in the Shofar newsletter. They're on our website. If you have any questions about them, you can always contact Jeremy in our office, which is info@kolhadash.com. So that's easy. So I guess my thought is this is to spark your interest, but I was worried if I had to memorize anything, which I don't. So upcoming women's group on Monday, July 19th, there is a Zoom women's group at 1:30 p.m. And the following Monday, July 26th, the women's group is playing canasta at 1:30 at the home of Joyce Hirsch. Right. There's a question. Okay. Our next adult Shabbat service, the topic is law and morality, and that's a Zoom only. Then, there's a new book club forming, a nonfiction book club. So if you're interested in that, you can contact Ilya Tallman or nonfictionbookclub@hadash.com. I like that it's all logical. If you missed the 20th anniversary celebration, the Zoom portion of it, or if you didn't miss it, but you would like to see some of it again, then you can see on our YouTube channel, there are links, and I think it will be on our website soon.
And the weekly email too.
And the weekly email. Oh, right. The weekly email has the links also for that. Sunday school starts August 29. I can't believe it. The membership information has been emailed to everyone, but if you didn't get it or you're unsure, again, you can contact Jeremy in the office. That's it. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. So to my left is our congregational menorah. It's 7 lights emblematic of the 7 days of the week. I'd like to take the opportunity to light the first of these candles. There was a name that came in the chat after we were done with our memorial names. Michael Fisher, who was a member of this congregation, one of our founding members, who passed away, I believe, last May, not this past May, but the one before. And he was one example of families that had to deal with grief and loss through the COVID pandemic, sometimes not related to the COVID pandemic. In Michael's case, it wasn't, but it was still a time of loss and a time of isolation at the same time. Even if we did do Zoom services and they were as meaningful as possible given the circumstances, it wasn't the same as having people to hug you. And so this is a candle in memory of Michael, but also in memory of all those families that dealt with loss and the isolation of that experience over the last year or so. And so now I'd like to open it up to you to come forward to share into the microphone. If it's memory of someone that you want to remember, that's certainly appropriate, but these are also candles of simchas and suras, of joys and difficulties. It could be someone facing an illness or something wonderful in your life or the life of someone that you know. And so this is your opportunity to share what's been happening in your community and in our community.
This is for, I had 2 friends lose their fathers this week. And one was my neighbor, and his father was 89 and died after a long illness. And then the other was my uncle, who I was very close friends with his daughter. And this was also after a long illness. And it's still, we could get together, which was nice, and we could go to a service, which was nice, but it's still sad. And Monday is going to be the memorial for my daughter's boyfriend's twin sister who was killed in an accident in April, and I still can't wrap my head around it. And she was 23, she just graduated from college, everything was starting for her, and she's gone. And so this is for my Uncle Charlie, for Bill Magus, and this is also for Alice. Thanks.
On the personal and on the congregational. Personally, wasn't here last week because we were in Detroit, where my son is now living and working, doing okay. Congregationally, I just want to say thank you to everyone for your participation, contribution in the 20th anniversary. What a wonderful celebration. How nice to be together then and now. It is extremely moving to just be together. Thank you for that.
So I'm lighting this candle because I'm very grateful. Irene, I'm so sorry to hear about that 23-year-old. And, you know, I Noah was in a car accident last Friday. He was driving northbound on St. John's and minding his own business, and a guy, I think, ran a stop sign and T-boned him. And he ended up flipping over and hanging upside down for a while until the firemen came and got him out of there. But I'm so grateful. I'm grateful that he's alive without like a scratch on his arm. Cross-track, Subaru Cross-track. I'm grateful for everybody who was there at the scene, who was helping him. I'm grateful to the rabbi for lending me a car right now because we were down a car. And I'm just really grateful. I have 2 people in my life in the last 7 months who possibly couldn't be here. And they're both here. So I'm very grateful. I'm grateful to everybody here. I'm grateful that I can be here and singing. It's very nice to have my sound coming back to me instead of sitting in my room and hoping that my dogs are outside howling along with me. So I'm just grateful, very grateful right now.
If anyone online would like to share a message, I will enable the unmuting of yourself if you want to raise your hand, and I'll recognize you, and then you could share a joy or a concern, and I'll be happy to light a candle on your behalf wherever you are. Is anyone who's online, do they have a joy or a concern that they would like to share? No one as of yet. All right, well, no, it's available to you. Oh, Cindy, did you want to jump in?
I'm just very grateful that my husband found a job quickly. We both found ourselves unemployed within 18 days of each other, and that was not the plan. But he found something very quickly and seems to have landed on his feet much better than we hoped it would be. So I'm just very grateful for that. That's my happy this week.
Wonderful. Anyone else, either in person or online, have something they'd like to share? William, please. Yes. Traffic jam at the.
Been so long since we had one of those. Hey, take 2. In this candle because there's a novel. I'm sure you guys already mentioned it a few times. I'm probably a few days from, or weekends from submitting a final, hopefully a second to last or last edit. So it's been something I worked on for years. Even been controversial in some circles before it even finished the first chapter, and I'm happy. I want to thank Sandra for her support over the years. And yes, I am writing it, and just joy to finally be near the end and other stories to come.
Well, I'm excited this week because I did hear from my daughter that lives in Europe that she will be coming in for a visit. I don't know the exact date, but with the pandemic, she hasn't been able to come to visit for the past year. And before that, it was a year. So it's almost 2 years since I've seen her, and I'm very excited and delighted.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Their troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I?
3 stories of inspiration from my own experience. The first was in November of 2019. I was leading a trip to Israel, as it turned out, the last one for a while, and we had the chance to visit a synagogue I'd always wanted to visit. It's a synagogue in the town of Tzipori, in the Hebrew term, or Sepphoris in its Latin derivation. And this synagogue was only discovered in the 1990s, but it was built around 450 of the Common Era. So it lay buried for almost 1,500 years. And what made the synagogue special are the beautiful mosaics to be found on the floors. Now, we don't know what was on the walls. Generally, the walls fall down. There might have been something wonderful on the ceiling or stained glass. We don't know. They fell down too. But the floors have often survived. And some of these most beautiful mosaics you'll find are on these synagogue floors, and they're a surprise because they include pictures you wouldn't expect to find in a synagogue, like the zodiac or the god of the sun and his chariot. What is that doing in a synagogue? I thought that was pagan. Well, evidently the lines weren't as hard at a certain period in history. And maybe rabbinic authority wasn't as absolute as later generations would have you believe. Visiting the synagogue itself was marvelous, but what happened at the end was what was truly inspirational. We actually had a limited time there to visit because they were setting up to celebrate a bar mitzvah. They had a podium set up, the family was getting there to decorate, they had chairs for the audience set up. It was functioning as a synagogue. And they were celebrating a bar mitzvah in this ancient synagogue after 1,500 years of absence, and now there was living presence in that space. And I found that to be truly shocking, uplifting, inspirational. A second story of inspiration, just last week, I went back to Ravinia for a concert. First concert in almost 2 full years. I had actually been in Ravinia before that point. I served as an election judge in the November election, and I was assigned to Ravinia because I'm in Highland Park. So I got in the grounds and I got to see it, and they still mowed. It It was not overgrown. I don't know if they mowed it just for us or if they mowed it all year long or what the goal was, but it looked pristine. But it also looked strange because it was so empty. No people on the lawn, no music, no staff. We came in the back entrance for the polling place. We went into the lobby of one of the indoor theater spaces. It was Ravinia, but it was not Ravinia. But going back, it was a rainy night. We were rushed because the wedding I had beforehand ran a bit late, so I had to run home and change and hurry out the door. We also didn't bring umbrellas because evidently they changed the rules in Ravinia some years ago, and now you can have umbrellas, but we didn't know that. So we got a little wet, or maybe a lot wet. But when the orchestra began tuning and the applause came up for the conductor walking to the stage, it was very moving because we've been going to Ravinia since we moved to Chicago. We've brought our kids to concerts there over the years, classical and otherwise. And it's a very special space for us. The combination of high culture and nature and people and everything that Ravinia is. So that was a very moving moment for me. And this coming weekend, in fact, on Sunday, we plan another moment that I expect will be equally, yet differently, inspirational. We're going to a state park, the Starved Rock State Park in Illinois. We've never been there. We've been to other state parks and plenty of national parks as well, but we've always enjoyed those outings to these national and state parks. There could be a number of reasons for it. My wife was a geologist in her bachelor's degree studies, and so studying the rocks is fascinating to her at least, less so for me. There's the history of how it came to be and who lived there originally, and if there's record of the Native Americans who were part of that landscape and what they did with it and what they thought it meant. That's part of the discoveries there. Maybe it's the higher oxygen level from all the trees and plants that we don't get in our daily life, but we find when we go out in nature. Maybe it's the disconnecting from the computer screen. No offense intended to our people on Zoom, but sometimes getting away from the technology is a positive thing. Maybe it's the physical activity. Sometimes the endorphins released and the energy expended gives you an emotional uplift. It's not just physical effects. And maybe it's the awe and wonder at the grandeur of the scale or the experience of a semi-tamed wilderness. After all, it is a state park, so it's not purely left to nature. We come back from those experiences in nature at parks refreshed, more motivated, more energetic for what we need to do instead of what we choose to do. And we might even say inspired from that experience. You see, people are more than just computers, hormones, instincts, mechanical functioning things. Call it consciousness, call it self-awareness, even call it a soul if you choose that language. We people need more than individual food and clothing and shelter. We're not just our basic needs. People need inspiration. We need to get beyond the ordinary. We need to open our mind to new possibilities. We need to sometimes feel and not analyze, and maybe make ourselves do that. We need to sometimes connect to things beyond ourselves, both rationally and emotionally. When you connect to the natural world, when you celebrate your cultural tradition, you light Shabbat candles, you share wine together. Part of it is a rational connection with your ancestry, if that's your background or the community of choice that you've joined. But part of it is also emotional and affective. It's not a rational analysis. I didn't search all of human culture and decide the Shabbat candles were the best symbol for marking time in all the world of human culture. It's my symbol. It's my people's, my family, my community of identity's symbol. And so that's what has extra meaning to me. So we get beyond the ordinary. We open our mind to new possibilities. And we explore our connections to the world and to other people. Whether or not you like the word spiritual, it's something we all need, even and especially for those who are philosophically secular people. Now, I have to admit at the outset, there's something wrong about talking through and analyzing inspiration in a sermon. You know, we should just be doing it, not talking about it. It's hard to be inspirational when you're talking about this is what inspiration is. You can be inspired by words, surely. A very moving eulogy at a funeral certainly can be very powerful and inspirational. Sometimes a deep psychological insight from a friend or even a therapist can really inspire you. Certainly a call to public action can motivate people and inspire them to do good things, even wonderful things. It's our aspiration for our services and celebrations at Kol Hadash. We want to inspire you, and we hope that the readings we choose, the music we include, the symbols that we bring to bear, they're inspiration by doing and not just talking about it. We try to connect to our past through the evocation of memories and a space for memorial and even sad memory. We try to connect with Jewish tradition through the symbols that we use, the music, the language. We connect to each other by sharing what's happening in our individual lives and by wearing name tags and by schmoozing with each other before and after the service. That's all part of getting beyond ourselves and feeling that uplift. I hope it's clear by now that inspiration is not limited to stories of supernatural miracles or angels that appear in the world and do marvelous things or divine revelations or the religious pomp and circumstance of traditional ritual. I remember my first visit to St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, which is a huge, impressive, gorgeous, ornate, gigantic structure. And then I thought to myself, this was built in the 1600s, over a couple centuries it took to accumulate the wealth to do this. And this was the wealth of peasants that were giving pittance to their local church that was then sending it up the chain. And this is what the church represents. It's high level and it's gilded and it's ornate and maybe it's obscene. I mean, it just felt like I sympathize with Martin Luther, you know, who said, you've raised all this money with all these indulgences, you're getting people out of hell for cash, and you're using it to build this? Well, that's the challenge with those institutions. But Jews are not unique, are not immune to that challenge either. Some people have a similar experience when they visit the Western Wall, which in Hebrew is often referred to as the Kotel, the wall. A traditional Jewish philosopher named Yeshayahu Leibowitz criticized the Kotel, the Western Wall, calling it the discotel, because it was sort of performative and it was a show and people were, you know, acting their piety when you don't need a space to feel uplifted in Jewish tradition. In fact, Jews prayed in a Beit Knesset, a house of meeting, no matter where it was. The location didn't matter. It was the attention, the focus, the emotional uplift, the sense of community. 10 traditionally men, 10 people make a minyan, no matter where you are. I found a wonderful Yiddish phrase recently. 9 rabbis are nothing, but 10 shoemakers are a minyan. It doesn't matter. There's something about the dignity of the person that makes the community. Well, we have our places that sometimes are overblown or overdeveloped and over-focused on, and we lose track of what's most important. I remember reading a wonderful quote from a figure in the Jewish renewal movement. I think it was Arthur Wasco, who, in talking with his interviewer, said, there's something wrong with Jewish tradition, where on the holiest day of the year, on Yom Kippur, the expectation is that we read a 300-page book out loud in unison. And that's the holiest day of the year. That's the most uplifting moment of the year, is reading a 300-page book out loud in unison. We can't do better than that. Maybe some silence once in a while, maybe some music, maybe something else. Well, now let me be clear. Some people do take inspiration from exactly these things that I've said don't inspire me. They love the pomp and circumstance of a beautiful, large, ornate church. They love the tradition of reciting those same words over and over again that their ancestors said and that they've said year after year. Traditional religious beliefs and practices and ideas continue to inspire millions of people. The simple principle is different strokes for different folks. We live in a world that would create macaroni and cheese ice cream, if you saw that recently, and they believe some people will like it and buy it. Now, we have to realize in a world that might do that, what might inspire us may not inspire our neighbor, may not inspire people in different cultural circumstances. What sounds melodic and beautiful to us may sound very different to an ear trained in different kinds of human music. Some are moved by watching sports and athletic achievements. Some are moved by participating in sports themselves. And others snicker at what they call sports ball in that crazy athletic context and complex. So as I've mentioned examples of where I find inspiration, don't worry if you don't like classical music, or if you're much more focused on mosquito bites than majestic scenery when you find yourself in a natural park. The core point here is that while every person needs inspiration, there are a million places, a million paths to find it. Perhaps it's meditation. And it's silence that gives you that sense of uplift. Perhaps it's poetry and hearing words put to beautiful juxtaposition that moves you. Maybe it's politics and getting engaged in the world around you, trying to build that better world that for so many left-leaning secular Jews of 100 years ago, that was their inspiration. It was working for, as they said, a shener and a besser Welt, a more beautiful and better world. Maybe it's connecting to your history. You know, I find archaeological digs to be fascinating because when I'm in that synagogue in Sippori, I'm where my people were 1,500 years before. And there's something about walking in those steps that's meaningful to me. I might get the same thing from the Great Wall of China, yet it was people, but not necessarily my people, and then that wouldn't have the same resonance for me. So studying history might be one of those avenues to find connections with the past. Experiencing all the varieties of culture, music, art, and so on. Archaeology and anthropology can make those connections for people. Going out in nature, doing athletics or appreciating wonderful athletes. Being part of nature at a mountain range or in one's own garden. All of these can provide inspiration. And all of them can be boring if they're done poorly or if they're just not your cup of tea. Some humanistic Jews like responsive readings, as we had in our service, because they feel connected with the group. And some people dislike responsive readings because they feel like it's groupthink to all be saying the same thing at the same time in dead unison. Wherever you find inspiration, however you find inspiration, go and seek it out. Maybe it's having your child or your grandchild light the menorah that your parents or your grandparents lit, and that intergenerational connection is something profound. Maybe it's discovering something new out of Jewish history you didn't know was there that reflects your values and beliefs. Maybe it's not just reading poetry, but hearing a poet read their own poetry, which I find a particular kind of non-musical music. There's something special about hearing someone who composed those words just so, reading them the way they meant them to be read. And maybe it's working for a cause. We have one of our bat mitzvah students who is doing her bat mitzvah project, as she's chosen a project rather than a Torah reading as the core focus, on disability inclusion. And so we've talked through options for choosing Hebrew readings that might work with that topic. But one of the assignments I gave the student was to watch the Netflix documentary called Crip Camp, which is about a camp in upstate New York that ran from 1951 to 1977 or so. That was a number of disabled people, including counselors who were disabled themselves. But it was a space where everybody had some disability. They weren't isolated and they were treated with respect. When it was your turn to come up to bat, if you needed a counselor to help you swing the bat, you swung the bat, but you played baseball. And it was such an inclusive experience for them. And then they went out to the world in the 1950s and 60s that wanted to hide them or forget them or ignore them. And they decided they needed to change that world. And so they pushed and fought. They finally got something, a bill passed, a subsection of a bill in 1973 after a couple of vetoes that was finally passed and adopted, but then it wasn't enforced and they wouldn't write the regulations to it. So they had sit-in strikes in San Francisco and in Washington, D.C. until finally in 1977, the regulations were signed. But even then, that was only for government-operated organizations like schools and universities. Didn't cover the private sector until 1990, when finally the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. It was actually a bipartisan effort with Tom Harkin from Iowa and another senator from Iowa, Bob Dole, who himself was disabled after World War II, who worked together to pass this law to provide some dignity and inclusion and basic human rights to the disabled in our country. That was a wonderfully inspirational story because it's telling you about people who needed to advocate for themselves, but they advocated for everyone. As just one example, what a great name, her name is Judith Human, who was one of these early advocates and organizers. She actually sued New York City because, as she put it, a polio victim can be president but not a teacher in the New York public schools because they weren't allowing her to be a teacher. And finally, she gained the right to do that. But she looks back and reflects on this process. And one of the moments that really struck me in the documentary was when they were talking about how they were including everybody. She insisted she would not hold a press conference or do anything in public without a sign language interpreter there. And this is in the late 1970s. We want to talk about inclusion and opening doors and everyone comes along. We're not in it for ourselves. I mean, that was really walking the walk. And so these are all ways to find inspiration. People who do marvelous things in the world, learn about their lives. And you should also push yourself a bit. I like classical music. It took me a while to get used to getting outside. I was not a camping family. We didn't grow up going camping. We were city travelers. We studied culture. We went to foreign countries in Europe. We did not camp. My wife's family, they were a camping family. And I'm still getting used to the camping part of it, but the outdoors part, I really love now. And even more so over the last year when outdoors has taken on such a more important meaning for everybody. So push yourself, try new experiences that could be inspiring. We need to remember to make looking for inspiration one of our priorities in life. When I came to Kol Hadash, we actually didn't do any community service in the congregation. And we decided that it was time for us to do something. We didn't want to simply let people do things on their own. That was fine. But we could create opportunities that wouldn't be divisive or political or controversial here, but that would let people do good together, focusing on basic human needs like food and clothing and shelter. And we've done that, and we've done that marvelously. If you've come to our high holiday services and seen the cars packed full of goods that people have brought to donate on Yom Kippur, it shows that people want to do good, and we can do tremendous good together, in this case, to help a shelter for battered women and children. But we know that life goes beyond those basic needs. To be a fully rounded human being, we need to widen our horizons beyond the dinner plate and beyond just four walls of the home. And so I want to conclude with some truly meaningful words by our own Rabbi Emeritus, Daniel Friedman, who is a rationalist, if there was ever a rationalist, but he describes why he is nevertheless a spiritual person. This was from a conference held on secular spirituality in 2001. And so now I will share this video of Rabbi Dan.
It may be objected that natural spirituality diminishes the importance of values, aesthetic and moral, inasmuch as they are merely human values, merely. How much more significant would they be if they were underwritten by supernatural authority? And this, incidentally, if this isn't self-evident, is why atheists are suspect by the general population. It appears to people that atheists have no moral grounding, no moral discipline. And secular humanism is a kind of guilt by association word, term. How much more important would values be if they are guaranteed by a supernatural authority than merely by human preference? On the contrary, natural spirituality may inspire us to appreciate beauty as well as justice, honesty, love, and so on, all the more precisely because we are aware that human beings are entirely responsible for creating and promoting the values, as well as the conditions that make them possible. Absent the belief in a creator God, we may be more appreciative of a neighbor's garden because we are aware of the human intelligence and creativity, not to mention labor, that transformed randomly scattered seeds into an intelligently designed place of beauty. You know that old story about the visitor who is admiring his friend's garden and says, "You and God have done a wonderful job here." To which his friend replies, "You should have seen it when God had it to himself." Whatever we behold in the natural world of flowers, mountains, and oceans, and in the human world of buildings, poetry, and morality, we who locate spirituality entirely within the human mind may be all the more appreciative of that mind's power. We are all the less likely to dismiss it, to condemn it, to mistrust it, aware that beauty enriches our lives, evokes the most powerful emotions, and inspires the noblest possibilities within us, we naturally wish to cultivate beauty and the appreciation of beauty in ourselves, in our families, in our community. Returning now to the question with which we began, I shall this time answer it myself. Are you a spiritual person? Of course you are. Unless you have no use for music, literature, poetry, drama, or dance. Unless you are oblivious to the genius of Shakespeare and Chopin and the talent of Michael Jordan. Unless you are indifferent to the majesty of a mountain range or the spectacle of a starry sky. It is clear that your spirituality derives entirely from within you, and it is clear that it is you who imposes your values upon all of reality. That is your greatness.
Seeking inspiration is itself a sign of human power and agency, and not only meeting our needs, but fulfilling our sense of self, finding a sense of purpose, and living our fullest life. And so at this point, I'll stop. I'll ask if there are any comments or questions or reactions. I see one comment in the chat, which just mentions a great story. Well, we certainly have plenty of time for schmoozing afterwards, and we'll also open it up for everybody online, again, to be able to unmute themselves as we wish each other a Shabbat Shalom at the end of the service. But we do have one more song, which is celebrating being together. It's called Hevenu Shalom Aleichem. We bring you peace. And so I invite all of us who are here and those online who are muted as well to sing along with Hevenu Shalom Aleichem, and then we'll unmute everybody for a mass Shabbat Shalom.
Hevenu Shalom Aleichem, Hevenu Shalom Aleichem, Hevenu Shalom Aleichem, Hevenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Hevenu Shalom Aleichem, Hevenu Shalom Aleichem, Hevenu Shalom Aleichem, Hevenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem.
Once again, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I'll invite those here to wish each other a Shabbat Shalom, and I'll invite those who are online as well to wish us all a Shabbat Shalom from wherever you are. So you are welcome to wish us a Shabbat Shalom here as well.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat
Shalom. Have a good weekend.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Nice crowd.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being here online, and thanks so much for being here in person. It's wonderful to see everybody back in our sanctuary space. Thanks so much for being here. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.